I bought Octopath Traveler a month ago, and for some reason, I just really couldn't get myself into it. I'm only around 4 to 5 hours into the game and gathering up the first 3 out of 8 characters. And yes, I do start with Firion, because Firion is basically Garrett from Thief if he has the haircut of Akise Aru from Miriniki, a combination of 2 great characters that I really love. Yes, please. But the thing about Octopath is that while everyone has been praising it to death for being really good, I find myself struggling to like it. I'm not saying that Octopath is a bad game. It's a solid game with great combat, great music, astounding visuals, but the story, man, especially early on. Not the story of individual travelers, they're pretty great. It's the story of how they are connected, which is basically almost to the point where it's non-existent. I know that JRPGs are notorious for being a slow burner, but say what you want about them. At least they have a party building story. There's no party building story connecting the recruitments of these party members. You're telling me that Firion, a man who might as well has put a giant sign on him saying, "I work alone and only work alone," recruits this random apothecary stranger for his adventure by... Actually, I don't really know. Talking to him nicely? Even Alvin was baffled by this entire thing. And then he says yes? To a thief? And even if you believe that, how can you convince me that a dancer seeking for revenge will just accept the help of a thief and an apothecary that she just met? Come on, guys. This is a JRPG. You have all the time in the world to explain these things, and yet you only resort to very brief dialogues that I really just don't buy. A typical JRPG would spend at least 20 minutes to establish how one party member meets another and how they join the party. Perhaps you should give the players the freedom to choose between those 8 characters and the order of who to recruit first. Instead of dealing with 40,320 blank permutations, you can just make one organic storyline with one party building permutation like every JRPG game ever made. Or 8 is fine too. I mean, we don't have the freedom to choose who'll get first, but at least 8 stories are lesser stories to deal with than 40,320. You know what? I'll talk about this game in depth in the future when I get the chance. But for now, let's put all of that aside. Let's put that aside to talk about Patreon. Huge thanks to Sam Pungin, Munef, Daniel, Alberto, and the Cooler Sub for the pledges. You are fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, my ramblings of Octopath is not the reason why we're here. Today, we're here to make fun of a very stupid person. The other very stupid person. We need to talk about the sexist garbage in Octopath Traveler. Yes, we should. This post includes spoilers from Octopath Traveler's story, but who cares? It sucks! Actually, there isn't really much spoilers, or at least significant plot twists, mostly because the article talks about Primrose, the dancer character. That, or maybe because the story was really damn predictable. You're telling me that Primrose, a character whose story is built entirely on revenge, is going to feel hollow and empty the moment she finishes her quest? What a shocking twist! If only I didn't watch billions of other fictions that give me this message.
I have been in the revenge business so long. Now that it's over, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life.
But seriously though, if there's one thing that I have to admit with Primrose's story is that it's pretty damn intriguing. A dancer who wants to take revenge on her father's death by using her sexiness and sexuality? I admit, it got me intrigued, and it's one of the darker storylines out of the 8 characters. So please, writers, spin this into ridiculous degrees. Octopath Traveler might be purposefully retro in its aesthetics and gameplay, but the game's most backward quality of all is by far the blatant misogyny. That actually raised an interesting question. Have you ever seen a normal person using misogyny as an actual critique in current year? I assure you that it's quite rare for something to be legitimately criticized as misogynistic by a normal person. Feminists, on the other hand, they're throwing that misogyny label about as frequent as gamers throwing the word "get good." The pixelated art style in this newly beloved JRPG looks positively modern in comparison to how it unnecessarily sexualizes, infantilizes, patronizes, and exploits the abuse of nearly every one of its women characters. Unnecessary, huh? How is the game sexualizing, infantilizing, and exploiting the female characters? Why are they unnecessary? Hopefully we'll get to the answer soon enough. The widespread success and popularity of Octopath Traveler took publisher Square Enix by total surprise, selling out so fast in Japan that the company publicly apologized twice. When it made its way to America on the Switch in July, it was to rave reviews that earned it a Metacritic score of 84. Proving that a game that pisses these people off can be a guaranteed success. There's a clear gender difference between how the male and female protagonist storylines play out. We've seen this in genre before, though JRPGs often get a pass, perhaps because American writers use cultural differences as an excuse, or simply don't bother taking these stories very seriously. But I am tired of excuses for why we should ignore this BS. I find it odd that you cited an article talking about JRPGs in general to prove the point that we have cultural differences between the West and Japan. The article is mostly talking about JRPGs, its mechanics, its story, and I'm not gonna lie, it's really well written. It's a legitimately interesting take on JRPGs, and I find myself very intrigued reading it. Surprisingly, the comments on the bottom are very insightful too, so go check it out.
To its credit, Octopath Traveler does have an even gender split among its 8 heroes, but the portrayal of the women is a noticeable regression from JRPGs, with solid women protagonists. Consider Final Fantasy VI's Terra, and Cilly's Trails in the Sky, or Valkyrie profile.
Wow, those are actually solid recommendations of JRPGs with female protagonists. But here's the thing, writer, not every JRPG should have great treatment of their female characters, and not every JRPG ever will.
It is perhaps the wasted potential of Octopath's female protagonists, whose stories somehow always manage to revolve around the men in their lives, that makes the game's casual misogyny feel like such a slap in the face.
Okay, let me translate that for you. The women characters in the game are reliant or dependent on men, therefore it is casual misogyny, and therefore it is a slap to the face. So writer, you're telling me that female characters cannot have significant relationships with male characters? Like, you know, their fathers? That's just an example, writer. Don't you dare use it!
After surviving her noble father's assassination, Lady Primrose went into hiding as a tavern price dancer. She and other dancers are regularly beaten, starved, and raped by their master. Yet Primrose is only motivated into leading these abhorrently abusive conditions when one of the men who killed her father happens to walk in.
Yes. Because Primrose doesn't care about her own dignity. She only cares about revenge. That's the point of her character.
Inexplicably, the townsfolk make jokes about the dancers getting raped and lusting for the private viewings that their master forces them to do for him at night, if you know what I mean.
I don't know what you're talking about, writer. I need citations on this event. Primrose's story is very fresh in my memory, and I do not recall seeing this ever happen at all. That and this is completely irrelevant to your previous point. I have no idea why this paragraph was even in here other than shock value.
All of these ordeals don't seem to hinder Primrose at all, as she flirtatiously used her special skill of seducing people into following her with a dance. In fact, the trauma of the place that taught her to dance appears completely divorced from all the fun that she has, using her sexuality as her main weapon and contribution to the team.
I'm very sure that she was just acting like she's having fun. And even if that's not true, she mentioned a couple of times that she loves dancing.
This results in jarring scenes where, one minute her master is beating her, calling her pet names like kitten, telling her where she should put her mouth, threatening to rape and kill her unless she finds more patrons, only for Primrose to saunter outside and obey by performing an adorable winky koi dance animation for a man on the street.
Yes, that's how her character works. What's your issue with it?
I'm all for sexual empowerment or reclaiming what was once traumatizing for yourself, but this isn't what it looks like.
Okay, I am listening.
This kind of careless mishandling of Primrose is a result of writers who want to use women's trauma to give a thin character some semblance of personality or depth, but her trauma is conveniently forgotten about for lighthearted moments where Primrose needs to be the fun, sexy one.
Again, it's because she really loves dancing. A lot of people love dancing. Go ask those in real life Twitch streamers. And even if she doesn't, she's merely acting that she loves dancing to get to whatever she wants. She's basically a femme fatale. Either you woefully misunderstood her character or you overstated the effect of her trauma. Actually, I don't remember her being traumatized at all. My impression of her is that she's an insanely strong, in some ways psychotic woman who doesn't care about the difficulties of life as long as she gets her lust for revenge. She's a sexier version of Indigo Montoya.
One scene encapsulates the weirdly fetishistic vibes embedded into Octopath's depictions of fathers and daughters. A father goes to a pimp with the sob story of how his daughter killed herself after being raped, but he's not grieving for her, he's grieving for himself, for the loss of having a little girl to dress up like his living, incestuous sex doll. He's elated to be given a sex slave in direct replacement for his sullied, dead daughter. I mean, what in the actual hell, Octopath Traveler?
I admit that story is pretty messed up, but how messed up the story was is completely irrelevant. It's the writer's reaction to how messed up it was that was the absolute goldmine of comedy.
Someone needs to answer for the crime of subjecting me to this scene.
Writer, you need to chill.
This absurd scene goes completely unaddressed, as if it's not the most messed up garbage you've ever seen in your goddamn life, but it tracks with the countless other inexplicable instances of infantilizing, sexually charged scenes between father figures and young girls.
Just through this paragraph alone, I know for a fact that the writer doesn't read a lot of stories. It is a messed up story, but in the realms of JRPG, I've seen worse things in Tales of Symphonia. I really don't recommend going to Octopath Traveler expecting something beautiful. I recommend you to watch more wholesome shows like Made in Abyss.
And it's hard to even justify this portrayal of trauma as lazy world building to convey Octopath's gritty, cruel vision of society, because it's pretty much exclusive to Primrose's story, and it's entirely inconsistent with the comparatively rosy world experienced by every other character.
That is actually pretty realistic, writer. You're living on the same planet where you can write this article on the comfort of your bedroom with your cat, while at the same time an actual war broke out in the Middle East. I kid you not, there is a citation that leads to the Feminist Frequency website. Also, writer, congratulations, you have figured out that Primrose's story is the darkest among the rest of the characters. Here's a cookie.
Whether or not it knows it, Octopath Traveler perpetuates the same vile treatment of women as the villains it tries to condemn. The notion that women would rather die than live with the shame of rape or sex work is a sentiment to put both in the mouth of so-called ruined women and
Whoa. Wait a second. Are you saying that women who sold themselves as sex slaves do not feel shameful for their jobs? I mean, yes, there are some women who enjoy these sorts of jobs, but to suggest that women who work as sex slaves feeling shameful about their work as a negative is quite bizarre.
The physical beauty of 3 out of 4 of the women protagonists is referenced throughout. It's remarked on whenever Primrose is on screen. Trisa's Captain Savior focuses on it when they met, even though she's a child. The religious Ophelia's own father figure feels the need to praise it in his daughters.
In other words, we shouldn't comment on women's beauty?
On the daddy front, there are just a few too many instances of women's fathers serving as a replacement for their own character motivation. Ophelia and Liana's story is so ludicrously centered around their paternal figure that
That's a spoiler for Ophelia's story that I personally find too significant to spoil, but reading through it, I have a feeling that you have severe daddy issues. Seriously, writer, what did your dad do to you? Why do you attack characters for having their issues to revolve on their fathers? Are you telling me that women cannot have their fathers to be a significant part of their life? The only reason why you have an issue with this is if you have undisclosed daddy issues. I think you seriously need counseling.
maybe this focus on their youth, appearances, and fathers wouldn't feel so gross if it happened to literally any of the male characters, but it doesn't. Youthful beauty and male masters only seems to be prerequisites for the women heroes of Octopath Traveler.
Writer, overly perverted, manipulative, and controlling pimps are not the same as your own father! Seriously, how can you put those two as examples of male masters? I'm very sure that one of those is someone that you need to have at least an inch of respect for. Again, what did your dad do to you? Please don't tell me that your dad is a pimp. Otherwise, I have to sound the alarm. Also, the only person who defines the women heroes of Octopath Traveler through their youthful beauty and male masters is you, because you exaggerate the importance of their beauty and how they have significant male figures in their life instead of, I don't know, their skills, their roles, their achievements, many million things that define the women of Octopath Traveler, but you exaggerate the significance of their youthful beauty and male masters while completely ignoring their other traits that define them just to talk about how sexist it is. It's not the game that is sexist, writer. It's just that you have a really sexist interpretation of it.
Then there's the gender divide embedded into the combat mechanics, specifically the job classes and special skills attributed to each character.
This section mostly talks about how the men classes are so typical and masculine: warrior, apothecary, scholar, thief. The women, on the other hand, are very feminine, like merchant, dancer, cleric, and hunter? But the writer dismisses the hunter one because, OMG, she has a male master? Sexist game is sexist.
Primrose and Ophelia are the only two characters whose predominant special skill is to call in someone more powerful than them for assistance in battle. Trisa also has a summoning ability tied to her job, and Honey's hunter skill lets her summon animals. Again, I'd be willing to overlook this if any of the male characters' special skills are all tied to summoning others for help, but their abilities are all markedly more self-sufficient and grounded in raw power, competence, and intelligence. The men get to challenge people to sword battles, glean useful information, steal valuable items, and concoct potions.
So, being a merchant, hunter, cleric, or dancer aren't tied to raw power, competence, and/or intelligence. Just because the women's special skills involve summoning people doesn't mean that they're incompetent. It's just their special skills in the game. That design is just mere coincidence. It's not a freaking patriarchal conspiracy. You need to chill, writer.
don't get me wrong, these issues don't originate with and are not exclusive to Octopath Traveler. They're grounded in the mechanics and stories of many role-playing games of the past, as well as a deep-seated misogyny buried in us all.
Ah, yes, the deep-seated misogyny buried in us all. This is why feminists always utter the misogyny word every single day, because they see it everywhere, and they have to point it all out, no matter how small or tiny or perhaps non-existent it is.
To be fair, most of Octopath's characters and stories are unoriginal, with fewer dimensions than its pixelated art style, but the male cliches are infinitely more empowering and at least tied to their own individual interests, desires, and passions, rather than perpetuated by a father figure.
So, having a motivation tied to a father figure isn't empowering? Writer, when was the last time you called your dad? Also, Alfin's character is tied to his mother and his best friend. No mention of that?
Women don't have to be portrayed this way. In Octopath or any other games and fantasy setting, we just have to care enough to demand better, and then do better.
I don't get how we can do better according to your standards, writer. You can't tell people to do better when you either misunderstand Primrose's character or you woefully exaggerated her trauma. You also suggested that having a father figure as one of the driving motivation is somehow bad. Putting father figures in the same lane as pimps on the umbrella term male master is a really stupid take. Emphasizing characters' beauty and male masters on the top of their other characteristic traits to highlight the sexism in display is just incredibly dishonest. To sum up, I don't think people can do better if you misrepresent a large chunk of the game's content. You can't do better through false interpretations. I just don't understand how game developers would take notes from your nonsensical critiques. It's just a worthless twaddle about Octopath Traveler, an Octopath Twaddler, if you will. Wait, Twaddler is an actual word?